So this is a bit late because this is a July wrap-up and a Jane Austen July wrap-up as well. So it's my first year ever participating in Jane Austen July, and in a previous video on this channel I made the sacrilegious confession that when I was at school I read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which is on the English syllabus, and I didn't enjoy it, and I've never read any Jane Austen since, apart from a failed attempt to read Mansfield Park when I was probably about 22 years old. So I came into Jane Austen July not as a fan at all, but realising that my reading taste has significantly changed as I've got older, and currently this year I'm loving the classics. So I came into Jane Austen July full of hope and really excited to pick up some Jane Austen again. So what I read, I ran with the group read book of Emma, and oh my gosh, I absolutely loved it. I loved the relationship between Emma and Mr. Knightley, his demeanour, sort of a counterbalance to hers. Emma is a character that is difficult to like, I think, but I ended up really liking her. I found her really amusing. Of course, she's stacked high with ego and interference. This is a book about matchmaking and having an ego big enough to have total faith in your own skills of matchmaking, even though you haven't thought through the consequences for everybody involved. That sums up Emma totally. She is completely self-confident in her own beliefs, in her own intuition, in her own gut feelings, which are always way off the mark. And she refuses to be pulled in and guided by people like Mr. Knightley. And I think that tension between the two, that there's a really strong honesty in their relationship right from the get-go, which has them falling out. It's a very honest love story with a great depiction of what love is in reality. I think sometimes with these older books, with the classics, you can get love stories that are very like with swooning, fainting women. Another book that I read in July was Ann Radcliffe's The Romance of the Forest. I loved reading these two together because of that aspect of the relationships. Ann Radcliffe is the queen of the fainting woman, the woman needing to be saved, the woman in dilemma. It's very much the weak, fainting damsel in distress of the romantic period. Nobody writes it better than Ann Radcliffe, and I do love it. It's dramatic, it's all melodrama. In Emma, the difference is that it's more set in reality, and I think I read and discovered for the first time, revisiting Jane Austen the age I am now, I could see those subtle seeping in of what it's really like to be in relationship with people, whether that be friendship or acquaintances or within a hierarchy of social settings and class. But she tells it so beautifully through the tiny events of an everyday life, like spotting somebody delivering a letter or the meaning of a piece of ribbon. These are tiny everyday events that hold meaning, and I think in our lived reality that is very much how life works. There are very few moments that are Ann Radcliffe moments, with the being swept away on a horse to some deserted abbey in the middle of a forest. It's smaller than an Ann Radcliffe novel. the voice is smaller, it's not as dramatic, but I really loved it for that. I think it's the first time that I've really appreciated how clever and how realistic and how real and tangible Jane Austen's characters feel. Different again to the Dickens reading I've been doing. I also read in July, I finished The Old Curiosity Shop. Big differences again. You've got big dramatic kind of caricatures of people. Very different when you set it against the reading of a Jane Austen novel, where the character, it's all very subtle. There are subtle shifts, there are subtle glances, subtle finger touches, subtle walks, subtle meetings and glances. It's all told through the minutiae of life, and it just was deep and rich and layered, and I loved it. They did slag off Birmingham in here though, which is just down the road from me. You can tell I am on the edge of Birmingham from my accent. At one point she says, they came from Birmingham, which is not a place to promise much, you know, Mr. Weston. I put in the margins, excuse me, don't slag off Birmingham. It is a novel as well that gives great social commentary for the time. I think because it is so based in the reality of life, it's almost like a time portal back. I loved the emphasis on letters and letter writing. Letters and letter writing are featured in this a number of times. I know a lot of my marginalia in the book comments about, gosh, people really did fall in love via letters. Also a great social commentary on how important the class system was back in Jane Austen's time. A lot of the dire consequences of Emma's matchmaking linked to her misunderstanding that, I think. She very much believes that feminine attraction and feminine flirtation and her own gut instinct and thoughts, which are, like I said, always way off, will overcome anybody's predisposition to think about class and to make a decision based on class, which she very quickly in the novel finds is very incorrect, and she puts her friends in dire straits because of that. I really loved that. I loved that social commentary, but it's not overdone. You don't feel like she's setting out to make some sort of comment on society. It just naturally evolves through her incredible writing. I was really impressed with my main read of Jane Austen July, and so because of that, my Lilac DIY Literature Degree Diary has come out. I have been, oh my gosh, I've been planning next year. I've been making some big plans for next year. Part of next year is I want to touch base on Regency period literature. I do have a lot of other plans though, so I've kind of honed down what I want to touch on, but next year my plan is to read all of Jane Austen's novels. This was going to be make or break. If I really had a difficult time with it, I probably still would have carried on planning it in, because I think as an author she's great to read, even if you are finding it a bit meh or a bit difficult. I planned it in for next year with like real enthusiasm now. I cannot wait to get to the rest of her novels and to reread the aforementioned Pride and Prejudice. So I am really grateful for my very first Jane Austen July for handing me Emma to read and me loving it so much. Other books that I read for Jane Austen July, of course, in Emma, Ann Radcliffe's The Romance of the Forest is mentioned, so I thought I would put them both together because my Gothic literature study this year, again, it's a small aim, a bit like next year. I just want to read and introduce myself to Regency literature with Jane Austen. This year my Gothic reading goal was just to introduce myself to the writing of Ann Radcliffe. So I read The Italian in January. This is the second Ann Radcliffe of the year. I love Ann Radcliffe. Like I said, very different to Jane Austen. This is subtle innuendo in real life. This is sweeping Gothic settings and landscape and language and events. It's women being captured and abandoned and imprisoned, and people being murdered, and finding skeletons in chests and hiding away and going on the run, and living inside an immense haunted forest, inside a crumbling old abbey. As with the Italian, it has some pretty interesting commentary as well around the life in convents, and which wasn't always so great, if you can believe Ann Radcliffe's stories. So in this book you've got Adeline, who has been abandoned by her father and thrust upon a family escaping from Paris. There's mystery around why the family are escaping. There's mystery around Adeline. They're threatened with being killed if they don't take Adeline with them, so they end up all fleeing together with this new stranger in their midst, this beautiful young woman, and because they fear they are being chased by soldiers, they hide in an abbey in the middle of this incredible forest, an abbey which they hear from the locals is possibly haunted. It's a fantastic Gothic setting. You've got the tunnels, you've got the trapdoors, you've got the secret rooms behind tapestries, you've got the nature encroaching, like huge nature and isolated nature and shadows and strange noises. It's all here in this book. I loved this book. I think I probably enjoyed this book even more than the Italian, which I also thought was fantastic. Then you've got the love interest of Adeline in here. She falls in love. She's also being hounded by the cruel Marquis, who is actually the abbey owner, and there's blackmail involved, and she's promised to him to keep the secret that they're living there. Oh, it's just so good, and things happen, and there are escape attempts and failed escape attempts. There's beautiful scenic writing in here. There's tension at the end. It's a real page turner, but it's big and it's sweeping and it's melodramatic. Lots and lots of fainting women, and it's fantastic. If you can, I would do what I did and read the two together. They're such a great read together because they're so different. I think this book really highlights what's fantastic about this book, and the opposite is true. This book also highlights what's amazing about this book in their differences, but equally I loved them both. So it was two fantastic reads there for Jane Austen July. So this was the main book. This was to read a book by a contemporary of Jane Austen. The next book I have to share was a non-fiction book about Jane Austen. You can see from this I'm only that far through. I'd only just started Jane Austen's Selected Letters when I kind of ran out of time. I am enjoying this. I'm finding it a bit dry, and I think that books like this might be better read after I've read all the novels. I'm really more of a fan of Jane Austen. I know her work more. So I started reading this. I haven't got that far in, but it was one that I did pick up and read in July. And then the last one for Jane Austen July was a retelling. This is the last prompt that I got to this year. So I read A Guinea Pig's Pride and Prejudice. This actually was really great. I mean, not only have you got the call to rescue small animals and to visit rescue centres at the end of the book, and a plea for rescue guinea pigs. I mean, I've got 2 rescue lurchers myself, and I'm all for rescuing animals where you can. But it's also great for quotes. So although of course it is an abridged text, it does come with some of the key quotes. I mean, if I handed this to one of my kids for studying Pride and Prejudice and said just learn the picture quotes, it might really go in. I mean, there were some hysterical pictures. The one of Mr. Collins trying to propose to Lizzie Bennet, that picture just absolutely cracked me up so much. Then you've got them meeting at the lake at Pemberley, which are just, the pictures are amazing. This one cracked me up. This is Mr. Wickham and Mr. Darcy when they were young, playing together in the sob story Fake Tale that Mr. Wickham tells. Just the fact that they're in bibs with a W and the D on, and the building blocks just cracked me up. And the guinea pig bottoms of Mr. Wickham and Darcy when they first turn up at that first ball and he refuses to dance with Lizzie. I just think it's just so beyond cute. So I did really love a guinea pig retelling of Pride and Prejudice. So that was it for Jane Austen July. I do really want to thank all of the hosts of Jane Austen July for such a great opportunity to join in, to do some collective reading, to take part in an event on YouTube, and for encouraging me to pick Jane Austen up again after, I'm not going to say how many decades, but a few. So I've really enjoyed it. I will be looking forward to joining in again next year, hopefully with a lot more experience of Jane Austen under my belt. Other books that I read, so I'm taking part in Jen the Librarian's Thomas Hardy Read-along, reading all of Thomas Hardy's books in publication order. We are on month 2, so book 2, Under the Greenwood Tree. Now, I read this book sitting here in this incredible, gorgeous pub in London, where I took up residency for the whole day. I had some amazing mocktails throughout the day, teas and coffees and lunch, all whilst waiting for my daughter to attend an F1 event in Trafalgar Square, where she got to meet the F1 drivers, because she's a massive F1 drivers racing fan, whatever you want to call it. I sat in a pub on the outskirts where I'd parked and just set myself up with a Thomas Hardy. So I read this in one day in London, just having a massive treat day. It was just wonderful. Very different to Desperate Remedies, which was the first Thomas Hardy book that we read. This is all intrigue and drama and mystery, and characters that you're not sure who's lying. There's possible murder. So very plot heavy this. This is much more character driven, much more nature driven. It's around a span of a year in a Wessex year in a little village. It centres around the church choir and the changes that are happening around the traditions of the church choir, with the introduction of a organ, which is played by the new primary school teacher called Fancy Day. What a great name. And it also involves the love story between Dick Dewey, one of the players with the choir in the church, one of the local village lads, and his developing love for Fancy. I thought the love story was beautiful, but most of all the descriptions of nature in this, it was just so lovely. The book opens with a scene of Dick walking back to the village of a night time, revisiting his family for a Christmas carol tradition where the choir walked through the village and sings Christmas carols. And it was just so nostalgic and so beautiful, having grown up in the middle of the country, about 3 miles from the nearest house I grew up, with just a tiny little village with a village church. It just took me right back to days of old, where the pace of life was slower, was way more gentle, and you just met the people that you met that were right in your vicinity, and it just felt like that. I really loved it. I've been seriously surprised by Thomas Hardy so far. I do want to do separate videos for each of these, but I keep running out of time. I'm currently reading the 3rd novel at the moment, which again I'm loving. So 2 very different reads. I don't think as yet we've got into the flow of a more traditional experience of Thomas Hardy, and I know that from listening to Jen's videos, which I will link below, because she's already read all the Thomas Hardys, where these are the only 2 that I've ever read. So I think that sort of misery aspect and what you would normally class as Thomas Hardy style were yet to hit. But for the first two novels, I loved it. This probably is my favourite out of the two, Under the Greenwood Tree. I just loved the descriptions. I loved the slow pace, and I loved that beautiful old-fashioned nostalgic feel of village life and his family and the parties that they threw. Just wonderful, great read. I also finished, for my Dickens reading, The Old Curiosity Shop. I spent a couple of months reading this one, so I loved it. I loved in this the characters in this were so fantastic. I think probably one of the most jaw-dropping villains of any novel is in this book. It says on the back, the fascinating, stunted and lecherous Quilp. The character of Quilp is astonishing. It really is. And as I read, I could feel my skin going cold reading about the character. He really is a great foil against the soft, angelic beautifulness of Little Nell in this book. But not just Little Nell, the gorgeousness of Kit. I absolutely loved Kit in this book. So you've got some great, beautiful, kind characters that kind of hold all the goodness you could possibly throw into a character, set against this sort of dark entity of the character of Quilp and the people around Quilp, all set in this sort of dark, dank London setting. Of course, it is a story as well that brings in a commentary about addiction in Victorian times. You've got Little Nell's father, who has his own problems, his own issues, which put them on the run from Quilp, having found out that they think they are homeless and they just need to get out of town. The journey that Little Nell and her grandfather goes on is also extraordinary. I think the character of Quilp as this sort of extraordinary evil being is kind of mirrored in some of the slightly more Gothic aspects of sort of circus life, Punch and Judy's. They're on the surface supposedly fun and nice, but that there is that undercurrent of something strange going on, something not being quite right. There being deceit in the mix, and they do get caught up in this world of sort of sideshows and Punch and Judy worlds and travelling fairs and travelling entertainers. It is all very strange and odd. Just a fantastic storyline for Dickens to do exactly what he does best, which is characters are so big they almost turn into caricatures of people. Well, they do. They turn into bigger than life caricatures of themselves. But I think for some people that puts them off Dickens. For me, I'm finding that's making me love Dickens. It's a bit like an Ann Radcliffe plot. It's so dramatic and so massive that you just have to go with it and just love it. So this is my fourth Dickens read of the year, and I found it every time. There are those one or two characters in there that are larger than life and are almost caricatures, and I love that. I love that. A bit like with David Copperfield as well. I love that idea of the journey, and each leg of the journey brings them into contact with more problems, more solutions, more characters. It's that subplot and the plot A, plot B, plot C, which Dickens does so well. It is a book to tear your heart out. I was pre-warned in my comment section when I said I cried all the way through David Copperfield that to watch myself in this one then. So a lot of you had said, oh, she's going to need the box of tissues when it comes to The Old Curiosity Shop, and you were right. I did. It broke my heart. No spoilers here, but it did. It broke my heart. I loved it. 4 out of 4 for Dickens. 4 5 stars so far with Dickens. I loved it. Finally, a more modern book. Heatwave by Victor Gestin. This is translated by Sam Taylor from French. This book, it's only a short book, was fantastic. It covered my prompt for Hot for July. It also covered the Read Good Challenge prompt of read a book in translation. This follows the story of a 17-year-old called Leonard who is on a summer holiday camping trip with his family when he sees tragedy unfold, and he keeps a secret about the tragedy, which kind of embroils him in the tragedy that he's witnessed and makes him in a way an accomplice to it. So there is that going on, but what this book does brilliantly, and I've never read a book like it before for doing this, is it transported me back to what it's like to be a teenager. This is a fantastic book for capturing the essence of those teenage years where you feel kind of at a loss with yourself. Nothing quite feels right in your own skin or outside of your own skin, where the opinions of others come into play in real sharp focus, where love and sex is just enwrapped in every moment, where friends are all obsessed with the same thing as well. And like, what happens when you're a teenager where you feel like you've lost yourself because of the stage you're in and you just don't know what to do with yourself. It is a book about the teenage psyche unravelling, it really is, and it did it brilliantly. I thought this was a fantastic read. It's one that I want to keep on my shelf. It is going to be at some point worth a reread. It was another great book. And I think it was nice to recapture those moments of what it felt like to be a teenager, because I don't think it really leaves us. That idea of not being able to think straight because of the phase of life you're in. As a woman that's just made it through the menopause and is now about to go into waving her kids off at university, there is an unravelling that stays with us through life. It's just the unravelling changes, and that not being able to think straight that changes for different reasons. So it was nice to look back at teenage years and think, oh yeah, it was like that then too. So a great read if you want to delve into that unravelling. So that's it, guys. It was such a great reading month, full of Jane Austen, full of classics again, full of fun, full of community spirit, full of read-alongs, and full of reading prompts. I am loving BookTube so much, so thank you for being a part of it. I hope that might have given you a push for some books that you might not have on your TBR yet. Add some more to it. Go on, do yourself a favour. A lot of these books are great, so if you haven't read them yet, perhaps give them a go. If you have read them 100 times over and I'm the only newbie in the building, then I hope you enjoyed listening to my first impressions anyway. It is weird being one of the oldest people in the building and yet being the newbie. It is a strange seat to sit in on BookTube, but I am loving it. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Bye.